Social Work Month in March is a time to celebrate and empower all social workers. Today, we will take the time to learn about the many positive contributions of social work and the kind of difference they make to our community. Joining us this morning is Sharon Irazo, licensed master social worker and Ibn Sina's bilingual behavioral health clinician, and our dear friend Mahtab Muradi, licensed marriage and family therapist and Ibn Sina behavioral health project manager. Good morning. Hi, Sharon.
Good morning. Hi. I told you, her coffee is different than our coffee.
It's Monday morning. Start the work week positive and happy, right? Yeah. So Sharon, welcome to Chai Time. Really excited to talk about you, the work, and celebrate all our social workers for this month of March, right?
Yeah.
So let's start with you, a brief introduction of yourself.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm a licensed master social worker. Just graduated in August, so this is like my first clinical job out of Ibn Sina. So, but yeah, I've been in the social. I got my undergrad in social work. Took a little break before diving into my grad school. That's where like I kind of hit the home running with clinical work. Really fell in love with therapy, working with children, adolescents, and like at Ibn Sina got the opportunity to start working with adults, which is also very. I like it a lot.
So this story is. So I have a sweet spot for social workers because back many years ago, Dr. Dorothy Trevino out of UTMB Galveston was my supervisor. So she spent 3 years and 300 hours shaping my career. And so even though I wasn't a social worker, I really had a lot of respect for what they do. And we were hospital-based, and UTMB, as you all know, is a very big system. And when they asked me to put together the behavioral health team at Ibn Sina, I wanted at least 2 social workers, and I got so lucky because they're really hard to find because they're very much in demand. And I hired one, and his name is Rudy, and he's like, I went to school with this amazing person, and she would love working with us. And I'm like, oh my gosh, universe, send me Sharon. And the communities we're working in, we really needed Spanish speaking and female, and I know she had some other offers, but she chose us, so I'm very blessed for that. And when she says she hit the ground running, that's how it happened at Ibn Sina too. The first day, I think you were translating, you were helping patients. and now she's actually doing field work, and she's done classes for Spanish-speaking refugee women, and they love her so much. After the project, they want to like have a group with her. So it just says so much about who she is. And I want you to. I'm not a social worker, but the way they're trained is a little bit different than some of the other mental health professions. So I want you to speak a little bit on that. Like, what's the difference between your license and my license? Because I think most people don't know.
Right.
So if you can speak to that.
Yeah, I can talk about social work in general. Like, there's like different paths that we can take. So there's like micro, which is more therapy-based, like one-on-one interactions with individuals. There's meso, which is kind of like more in the middle, like kind of nonprofit work, doing outreach. And macro, which is more political, like going through policies, trying to see like which policies affect our populations that we serve. And I was exposed to all of these under my undergrad, specifically more meso and macro. I did my internship at United Against Human Trafficking, so it was like educating the community on human trafficking, training police officers, hospital workers to like kind of know, like, look at the signs of what is human trafficking. And for grad school, I did more clinical work, more one-on-one interaction, working with children and adolescents, providing therapy for them. They're depressed, anxious, or behavioral issues that they're dealing with, that I'm able to help bring more self-awareness to them, build up their self-esteem, because a lot of them have low self-esteem. And so like I said, different routes. It really depends like which way you want to go to. Like I decided to do clinical route, which is more therapy based, just because in the Hispanic community, mental health is not really talked about, and it's like kind of just like a lot of stigmas. So it's kind of breaking down those stigmas between my community. Like it was really hard in my household. We never really talked about mental health, so it was didn't really much get exposed to it until I started going to college. Like, oh, this is very interesting to me. Like, I wanted to do something with mental health, but wasn't sure what I wanted to do with mental health until, you know, I got introduced into social work by another friend. I was like, that's kind of interesting, you know, like, let me dive into that. I was doing a different track, and then I fell in love with social work and haven't looked back since. And yeah, I don't know if you have any specific questions for me. I can go on and on.
You know, it's interesting. She says that in Hispanic families, it's unheard of. I think it's safe to say I was probably one of the first Persian therapists in the Houston area, because I was getting calls from like Washington, D.C., Canada, and all over the place because of the Farsi speaking aspect. But as I was learning to become a marriage and family therapist, I think my family was starting to appreciate what therapy could do to the family dynamics. And it was so cute. Like, I remember the first visit I went back to Iran when I was already doing my practicum and internship. And my uncle, you know, like, yes, this is important. These are very, like, masculine, like, you know, Middle Eastern men. And they started to really appreciate, just because now is one of them who was speaking that language. It literally is, it's almost like a cultural shift. Right? When you open your mind to mental health, you start looking at life differently. Suddenly problems don't bog you down. You kind of open up to solutions and asking for help. And in our cultures, we don't do that. And so I think just who Sharon is and the fact that she can deliver these messages in Spanish and in English. You know, you speak perfect English. You know, that's very powerful. Not just in your community, but also in the broader range.
Yeah. I agree with like the family dynamic. Like I said, it wasn't really talked in my family until like I started having those conversations with my family, and that's when family members started opening up about their mental health problems that they were dealing with, and I was like, wow, this is really happening inside of the household. Yeah, because we don't really talk about it in our community. Yeah, we get pushed down.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we don't realize it, right, till when we start talking about it.
And when we don't take care of in family, it spills over in workplace, right? And we see that a lot.
Yeah. So Sharon, what unique challenges do Hispanic women face in the community?
I think just looking back with the refugees I've been working with, because this is like their first time being in the United States, a lot of them have like the language barrier, you know. They are taking classes, but there still is that language barrier, communicating with others in the English language. Transportation is a big issue with them too. They don't have their license, they're working on it. Also not having like a big support, you know, like their families in another country, so they don't have that support. And with the refugees I'm working with, you know, there's topics that we talk to educate them on, but also like I also take the time for them to like kind of talk about their own problems that they're dealing with day to day. You know, I make time for them to kind of have them as a support for each other, and I always encourage them to like, you know, take this time to like kind of talk about what issues you're facing, difficulties, maybe someone has a solution for it, and like just keep in contact with each other.
Yeah, it must be very hard because, you know, from where they've come from, and then you know they are here. You need that. They have to be comfortable too. It's that comfort level that they have to reach, because many times they are in that shell, right?
Yeah. Well, creating safety. I think one thing that maybe is not spoken of often is it is a skill to carry a conversation and make a group of people feel safe who have been traumatized, who are displaced. So those active listening skills, you know, what the energy you bring into the room. And so for you to be able to do that, and for these women to become friends with each other and look to you, you know, this is a very important part of their life. And when we, as human beings, when we learn how to hold pain and give support and encouragement in the time that someone needs it the most, that creates all kinds of brain activity, right? And it's leaps and bounds. It's like, in childhood when you intervene early, look at what the research says about that. And complex PTSD is no different. And so that's one of the reasons I'm proud of the work you're doing, because sometimes it takes a clinician to feel that confidence to go there. You could just go in those groups and just say, okay, this is our topic, and then dismiss. But you're creating a safe space for these women, and that's going to go a long ways, because they're somebody's mom, they're somebody's spouse. So that's how that energy just radiates.
Yeah. And I think everyone's journey is different too. So it all depends on individuals. So I guess you have come across different individuals with different, their journey, their story. So you have to kind of work around, their situation, right? Yes. So can you share some, some experience with you've had with some of the refugees?
Yes, well, some of the refugees, like, they have education from their country. Some of them were teachers, some of them were doctors, and they're coming into this country looking for minimum wage jobs. So it's very, the cultural difference is very different compared to the United States. Like, some of them are struggling to find a job, and it's been really, like, allowing them to talk about that. Like, I'm also helping them look for resources, like food pantries that they may need in case for simple things that they need, like toothbrushes, food, just so that building that foundation for them, so they don't get to a level where, like, maybe they become depressed or anxious. Like, we're trying to keep everything level for them.
So I remember this conversation. It was a while back, and I was talking to this lady, and she was part of a nonprofit too, and she was talking about the refugees that she helps. She says it's something that which is so normal for us. For instance, going to the grocery store, they don't know. They don't know what to do when they go. There's such a massive place, and there's so many things, so many items, but where do they begin? So as simple as that, taking them grocery shopping, but teaching them the value, or, like comparing prices or seeing things like that, and
showing the ropes, right?
Yeah, and we don't think about that, right? Because for us, it's such a normal routine or something that we just go pick up stuff. And but she was saying that, they basically, like, she had to teach them of what to do when you enter the grocery store, because you see this massive store, and with so many things, you get overwhelmed, right? So I guess those are the basic needs.
Even how you're seen, right? I mean, you mentioned these women were doctors and teachers and professionals. I remember when we first came to the U.S., they just assumed for some reason that I was not from here, so they put me in an ESL class. Like, I don't even speak Spanish, right? So the stigma, or maybe when people know you're from a different country, and you don't know how to express yourself clearly, sometimes people say you're overlooked. You become, and already women deal with that, but imagine that invisibility factor multiplied. Suddenly it's an identity crisis, essentially, right? Think about, you're in your home country and things are just going well. Like, I remember when I was doing the work with the Afghani refugees, this woman was a nurse. 2 of her kids were physicians, and she felt the need to show me a picture of their house, because I walked in, and it's just hard to go into a space and see visibly that people don't have enough, and they're struggling, and they know who they were 2 months ago, right? And then they don't have a choice. Like, there is no going back. Like, one of the things we have to be careful about is, we can't take pictures, because sometimes taking a picture of some of these people could put their family members in danger. But the extent of the need that's out there for just the basic life necessities and what they're promised when they come here and what they actually get. There's such a disparity. And so one of the things that I love about our program, our whole project, is about filling that gap.
Yeah.
Where we go in and we're like, you don't have enough food to feed the people that, I mean, it's a bedroom apartment and 8 people live here. There's not enough soap. There's not enough shampoo. There's not enough food, right? And sometimes they don't know how to fill out the form, and they get denied the renewal of, their food stamps. I mean, it's devastating. I remember crying the whole way back, and I, that impacted my family. So, when my daughter started the diaper drive, and then the executive folks that I was coaching, they were sending, because now I knew kind of where to send things to. Yeah. And so they sent 10 bags of rice to this one family. When I found out they were not going to have food, it's very hard to walk away from that. And those are things, I just kind of go on my human impulse, but social workers are trained to look for those things, because traditionally in our medical system, they were the first mental health professionals that were kind of an arm of the hospital system. And so they're very equipped to identify these sort of things. So I feel very privileged that I have Sharon and I have Rudy. They can go, and they're not just these support groups or classes, but they actually have an eye for it. When you came back and you said we need to do something about, doing drives, and we talked about maybe rotating months, 1 month we do hygiene, 1 month we do diapers. Mm-hmm. So it's more than that. It's more than just let me listen to your story of pain, but let me lift you up enough so that you can go and tackle life. Mm-hmm. And get back to the person you can be. I think at least that's what it is for me, and it just keeps renewing itself.
It's really to empower them, that's the main goal, empowering them so they have their own autonomy, be able to do their own things for themselves and not rely on others.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So these women go in, you kind of prepare them also to go into the workforce as well?
Not particularly, but if they're looking for jobs, I keep my ear out, see if there's positions that they can apply to, any interest that they have that they want to work, kind of like that. Just trying to build connections for them so maybe they can get a job so they can start earning their own money.
Okay, so you kind of prepare them to get into the workforce? Is there any kind
I think on our end is more promoting pro-social skills that are applicable to the host culture, teaching folks about what a normal interview might look like. So sometimes in therapy you do role plays and you normalize the host culture's norm to prep that person for transitional decision making. So maybe they were a housewife, maybe they were a doctor and they were bossing everybody else around, but here they know it'll take them 8 years to get back there and they don't want to do that. So what's the option number 2? Mm-hmm. And how do you prepare these women to go out there and present themselves accurately?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what does research say about what organizations and leaders can do to invest in women?
Yeah, so some of the things that I saw on doing research was invest in their career, give them somewhere to go. So that can look like taking leadership classes for them to become leaders as well. Continuing education courses, social workers, LPCAs, and LMFAs have to do 30 hours yearly to keep their license. So investing in that. 74% of women leave due to lack of career development. So having an opportunity to grow within the organization can help the woman stay in that field instead of going somewhere else. Also helping build their confidence is very important. There's only 6.5 feel confident in their role. in their struggles in the workplace, right? Women face, we earn 70 cents for every dollar a man makes. And just helping them build that confidence where they're able to kind of take a leadership role, ask for what they need from a leadership, from someone who is above them. Also help them avoid burnout. Burnout is very real, something that we talk about. It's one of the first things in social work we talk about. Burnout, kind of helping them not get to that point where they feel unmotivated to go to work. They don't feel like they're achieving anything in the work field. Also dealing with bias in the workplace. That kind of looks like how they're being treated by male leadership. And sometimes they don't get the credit for the work that they do. They're not heard when they have ideas to help the organization grow. And also provide support and opportunities for mentorship and sponsorship. So this can look like just checking in on them, checking on your employees, asking like, what are your goals? How do you want this organization to grow? How can we support that? And like I said, invest in women's leadership development. I feel like we need more women in leadership so we can, so all women can inspire to get to that place that, like we can do the same thing as men can, maybe even a little bit better.
Sharon's the troublemaker. I think that the mentorship is not emphasized enough. That mentorship is so key.
Yeah.
And also, I look at my own career. My mom was always a housewife. So she was the CEO of our family.
Yeah.
And that's huge. It's 5 kids, and she's the reason where we are. But that was different, right? I totally picked a different path. So as much as people who supervised me and mentored me, I was also responsible to be eager to receive that mentoring. It's a two-way relationship. And I tried that. I tried to replicate what was gifted to me with my team. I'm tough, but I try to be kind too and be patient. And that's the way my career path was shaped by leading women like Dr. Trevino, like Dr. Triana. Between the two of them, that's like 14 years of my career right there. And that's very valuable.
Yeah. All right, so let's go on a short break, and when we return, we will continue our conversation with Mahtab and Sharon from Ibn Sina. This is Chai Time, 103.5 Hum FM. Welcome back to Chai Time on 103.5 Hum FM. We are in conversation with Mahtab and Sharon, and we are celebrating Social Work Month. And it's been such a great conversation, learning so much about social work, which we don't even realize how important it is to this community and how much they help the refugees as well. We've been talking about that and the difference that y'all are making. So let's continue with this conversation. Sharon, what are some tips on helping women manage workplace mental health stressors?
Yeah, so bringing awareness can help lessen the negative mental health effects. So just having an honest, open conversation about what stressors they have at work. So like recognizing and acknowledging those unique challenges women face, which include gender biases and systemic barriers. So just normalizing the talk and topic can make a long difference. And also creating a community. This will offer support and validation between their shared experience. They're able to share their stories that they have, because sometimes it's hard to talk about what they experience at work. And because they don't want to feel like, well, if I complain, how would this look? How would it backfire? So we kind of just keep it to ourselves, and which kind of leads to burnout, and just,
leaving.
Or
right?
leaving, yeah. And just getting back into the work field can also be hard if they have some time away. So just creating a community, just normalizing the talk of mental health, the stressors that jobs create. Not all jobs are easy. This being a mental health professional is not easy either, but we chose it for a reason. We want to help people. We want them to strive to be their best version of themselves, and just having honest conversations can go a long way.
Yeah.
Sometimes, we talk about women a lot, but I think some of my best advocates have been male colleagues because they have been very humble and open to talking about those uncomfortable conversations that Sharon's referring to. Like when you're in a situation where everybody has the space to offer an opinion and your male colleague notices that maybe you were overlooked and they choose to step up. And this happens in our group. We have 3 male clinicians.
Yeah.
And they're such advocates for their female counterparts that I've had to say, guys, back off so that they can develop their own assertiveness. I'm like, this is such a good problem to have. So they get carried away advocating for the women on the team, which is very nice. I mean,
Yes.
don't get me wrong. That's where we should all be headed. Yeah, so that's one thing. And also looking for mentorship, right? Like we talked about that right before we went on break.
Yeah.
That's such a powerful thing. One of my good friends, actually, my best friend, she's in the aerospace field and she's doing some amazing work. But another friend that I met through her, she's essentially putting, this huge project together for the mission to the moon. I mean, she's, I don't even know the language they speak in aerospace engineering, but I have the utmost respect. And she says that, it doesn't matter at what level you're at. Some of the struggles are very similar. She says sometimes, like, her team forget that, that she's in the lead. And I know, like, engineering has always been traditionally more male than female. In our field is very kind and nurturing. So we're almost a little bit too much. We don't represent, like, the masses. But when I did my pilot project with Encore, the executives, there's the attorneys that I've worked with, a lot of physicians that I've worked with. It's different. Each environment has its unique struggles, but then there's this kind of theme of similar struggles that women are having.
Okay.
And so it's important, it's not just for social workers to be advocates, but men should be advocates. Other women should be advocates. We should have the ability to have uncomfortable conversations, or change will never happen. Right? One thing we operate from is the whole change model, right? If you don't touch the status quo, it will yield the same results. And oftentimes it's too comfortable. It's safe. We know what to expect. We make excuses. Well, you know how that is. And then systemic change does not happen. So another generation has to hold that bag, right? And for me, this is almost 24 years in. And although there's been a lot of good change, there's still almost like some movement backwards. We went to the International Women's Luncheon that Chairman Rupani sponsored with Commissioner Briones, and they were actually highlighting the business model of what this could look like in our future if we gave more support to female executives, to people who are growing a career. For Sharon to go to school for 8 years and not be happy in work and just give it up and, do something else with her life, that's a cost on our society. We invested in something and we didn't get the most out of it, right? And I talked to attorneys, like, the workplace was too mean. I'd much rather just go home and be with my kids. You hear there's corporate bullying and intimidation going on, even with some of our female judges. And it's kind of an ironic thing to say out loud that they have reached the highest, basically, the power, if you wanted to look at that, and they're still dealing with some of the same issues that the rest of us are dealing with. But who's talking about it? But what's good about talking about it if you don't make actions? Like policies. Social work is a lot about policies and legislation. I remember when I worked with Devro, the reason I stayed 11 years, we were constantly in an ongoing dialogue because I had my first kid. Like, what can we do to make sure you stay, right? We're exempt employment, so it's just doing the work. So I said, well, I do want to nurse my child. And so I live 7 minutes away. So these are her feeding times, right?
Yeah.
And I will come and make up the clients I need to see.
Yeah.
And I will meet my quota. And sometimes I may email you a treatment plan. They made it work for me.
Oh, wow.
And I stayed for 11 years. I had my second kid, and I stayed. Then I served on their board. Like, that's how, your ability to build relationship, invest in your employees, and then they give back. That's long-term ROI, right?
Yes.
Return on your investment. Every time we lose somebody unhappy, that's negative PR. That makes it harder for us to retain the next person, right?
Yeah.
So sustainability is directly related to how we treat each other. And it's not, I don't want to make this only about women. It's just like, are we truly invested in our employees and helping them grow and advocating for them? Because if something happens and she brings it to my attention and I do nothing about it, it's almost like sending the message that not so good thing was okay by me. So what is the cost of inaction when it comes to accountability and building policy? And what will bring people towards you versus not wanting to deal with you because of the toxicity?
Yeah. I know, I totally agree with you, Mahtab. That that change needs to happen in the workplace for sure. And even in our regular lives, like, we have to make, like, so many times we take that one step forward, but then again it's 2 steps back. So
Yeah.
when are we going to really keep moving forward for that change? And like you said, like, even normalizing things, normalizing conversations, or things like that, we still are so hesitant to talk about things that do matter. We just don't want to go into that space. It's like, we feel like we're going into a dark space and there's
Yeah.
no light at the end of the tunnel, basically.
Because with someone before us mismanaged it, and
Right.
we're exhausted. Like, as a society, we're exhausted. But there's all kinds of, in marriage counseling, we spend a lot of time on understanding power. Because the way power is distributed in a couple dyad, the way power is distributed in a family system is everything. It's the difference between buy-in and check out. It's the difference between staying together and splitting. Nobody is blind to how others see their value.
Yeah.
Even when we're put in situations where, we're in the minority, we still know right and from wrong.
Yeah.
Right? At the core of every human being, we know fair and unfair. We know right and we know wrong. But our tolerance, like, I had a great professor who says, do not get used to getting used to the bad things. And that's when you're the agent of change. And you need to go out there and you need to challenge those things, because it's like the person who's medically ill and they ignore a pain and they ignore a pain, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, you have stage 4 cancer. Emotional pain is not any different.
Yeah.
We all have a threshold, right?
Yeah. And even like, going back to the workplace, many times, like I've, worked in pharmacies, I've always worked with corporate, companies. And I still remember in those days we used to have meetings. And, of course, things changed, things evolved. We had new managers in place and all. But initially, the meeting used to just be like pointers, or, say, okay, this is step one, step two, step three. There was no input from us, like, how do y'all feel, or getting to understand us as we are working hands on, right? So when I started working in the restaurant here, in my own restaurant, and I one thing I had, like told myself, the first meeting I have, I'm going to get my entire staff involved in the sense, like, get their input. Okay, we had this problem at the restaurant. What would you do? Or what did you do? And how would you change that? So making that negative into a positive was so important. And I know the meeting we said was going to be an hour, but it went on forever.
But the food is good. You can keep
But
going.
just getting them to talk.
Yeah.
And realizing that they have so much to give, like so much input and ideas, because when you are listening to them and hearing out, their whatever it is, right, that their problems and things, but even getting them to think, how are you going to resolve this? It just made a huge difference. And, like even now when I have my meetings, I make sure that I do it that way. I feel like getting the staff involved in decision making, in things like that, is important. Because many times there are workplaces that just tell you, this is what I want done. These are the things. I mean, everything is in paper. You're just reading it through, and the manager's just talking to you and telling you. But then you're kind of like, you block yourself because you're just like, okay, I'm going to take it home and just read it, right? So
They say that, in our amygdala, there's the emotional regulation center of the brain. When you get the slightest hint that you're disrespected or rejected, it moves back. It disengages. You lose that person. There's all these things that say, after a while, when you get a lecture, it starts to sound like
yes.
mumbo jumbo. And that's kind of our brain, like, are you kidding me? You're going to just tell me what to do, and without looking at me as a human being. So maybe for you is your lead chef, and you're focused on one customer being unhappy, God knows for what reason, but the difference between you going to that person and say, okay, what could we do? Maybe we could start asking for people's salt tolerance or whatever. What was
Correct.
the complaint? Let's deconstruct it. Let's understand it together. Let's see what your input is as the lead chef. Let's see what we could, the business side are. And then also put our heads together on how to litigate it, right?
Correct.
You walk away learning from
Yes.
it. They feel seen. They feel valued. They don't think they're just a chef at that point, and they're just like back there making the food. They own that identity, and they're going to be proud because they're like, well, I had a say in how the menu went.
Right.
Or we became better communicators as a team because of that complaint. So complaint is not a bad thing, right? And that's one of the biggest misunderstanding, is that conflict is bad. Conflict is an opportunity to renegotiate and bring two forces together for the betterment of the greater good. So that's my definition of conflict.
Yeah.
Now, conflict is scary for people who don't know how to clean it up. So we need to go teach these skills, right?
Yeah.
We need to teach them from the time we're very young, not in a punitive way, not to take away something, but, gosh, I see you struggling. Let me give you some tools, right? Writing out, teaching people how to slow down so that their reactive brain, their emotions, and they're not in a crisis when they're resolving the conflict.
Yeah.
Knowing when to walk away, knowing when to get yourself put together. I had another supervisor who was an ex-Marine, and he would
Yeah.
say, leave everything at the door because when you walk in here, these kids need you. They've been through so much. Because I worked at an inpatient mental health found the several years, and he was so good. He's like, yeah, y'all don't need to know about my fight with my wife. I don't need to know about your business. When we're here to help these kids, we need to truly be here, mind, body, and soul, and just share our resources. And some days will be tougher than others, and we lean on each other. And that was a great, lesson to practice every day. Like, are we good at switching gears? Or do we bring up everything? I call it, some people like just emotionally vomit on other people all day long because, I don't know, maybe they're too cheap. Nowadays, you can literally get therapy for nothing. If you truly need the help, just call us. Right? But stop damaging relationships. Stop taking it out on kids. Stop taking it out on a customer, We talked earlier about my daughter's Starbucks stories. She has so many. And I'm like, sweetie, that was not about you or that cup of coffee. Yeah. And you need to just hang on to that and go there in your next shift and try to make some more funny stories. But let's not mix up those lines, right?
Yeah.
How often do we go into spaces where it's so evident that an ego is just getting played out, that someone is so shut down, they don't want to get feedback, they don't want to grow, they don't want to apologize. You know how many adults I know that don't know how to do a full-fledged, appropriate apology?
Yeah.
I used to tell my kids, who's the brave one, the first one to apologize? That is a sign of bravery. That means you have recognition, you have the EQ to say, oh my gosh, I'm going to read this room, something I may have done. I don't even need to go research it. This person clearly saying, you hurt me, and that should be enough. Or this person comes to me and says, you disrespected me. That should be enough to say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can you break that down for me? I don't want to do that again. That's not the person I want to be. So I think all these together, and it's not a unique struggle for women, but when we're doing these classes, when we go teach folks of different cultures, different backgrounds, we bring everything that we've experienced. And so we should do every bit of the work to make sure our best version is present with them, because they've been through enough.
Yes.
And they deserve the best version of each one of us.
Yeah. Well said.
Oh my God. Don't ask me to repeat that, please.
I have it recorded. I'll replay it. So Sharon, tell me, in this profession, how has it made a positive impact in your life?
In my life, just like being aware of my feelings, being able to express how I feel. Just because when I was younger, I was not able to express my feelings very well. And like just having open conversations about stuff that I'm dealing with, and not being ashamed or hiding from those topics. Like I love talking about mental health. Like every chance I have, like I'll bring it up. It's just like conversation. It's I just fell in love with mental health. I was always curious about our brains and how they function with our bodies and everything. So,
You picked the right field, I guess. Safely say.
So, any advice to anyone who's considering this profession?
Advice, it's a great field to go into. Like we have many options. Like you can become a therapist, you can do more, become like a politician as well. Like I think social work is a foundation where you can go anywhere you want, and it's not. You have so many options. It's not limited. You can explore different fields. You can work in a hospital, nonprofit, build your own nonprofit. Like I said, become a politician, build policies to help communities that you want to work with. So there's a lot of options. Like I can also shift gears whenever, if I don't want to keep doing therapy, like I have options out there, But I really love therapy. I love that one-on-one interactions with individuals, and just like helping build up your own community.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, anything else you would like to talk about?
No,
Nata?
thank you. I appreciate you guys so much for giving us this space, because we're a new team, but a lot of promises and hope, and it's been nice to see that happening in these communities that need it. So thank you.
Yeah, you guys are doing amazing work, honestly. And, when Irfan asked me what's the topic, I said, do you know it's Social Work Month? And he was like, wow, they are truly doing God's work. So I totally agree with what he says. You all are doing God's work for sure. So thank you both for taking the time out this morning.
Thank you.
For serving our community. You're doing it every single day. And it's amazing that I got to meet you and talk to you. And I have my dear friend Mahtab all the time here.
I know.
Really blessed. And we learn so much. Like each time you bring someone on, it's a learning experience for us too, to learn more about, what it's not only about, we talk about mental health, yes, but the services that are out there, the resources that you all provide. And, going into that in-depth knowledge of it, it's quite an eye-opener for us.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, listeners, for tuning into Chai Time. We shall see you same time, same place next week. Signing off, Chai Time, 103.5 Hum FM.